Hey guys, welcome back to the Design Build podcast. I'm your host, Eli Tomlinson. I own Grizzly Mountain Construction, here with my co-host, Brittany Grogan.
And I have Hailis Design.
Yeah, so we're here. We're going to talk about a few things that come with the process of bringing in a designer to the project, when to hire them, also a contractor, when to hire a contractor, the questions you should ask your designer and your contractor, just so that you can learn as you are thinking about your next remodel, your home build, whatever it is, really the process and the questions that you should be asking when stepping into these relationships. Because oftentimes you kind of just think of it as this person is providing a service, when in actuality, you're kind of stepping into a pretty loose, intimate marriage with someone.
Maybe dynamic
intimate's not the right word.
A dynamic
very
relationship.
Dynamic relationship.
And in that note, just as much as you need to qualify the people that you're going to hire, we're also looking to qualify clients to make sure that that relationship is as fruitful as possible. If you're going to use your intimate word, I'm going to use fruitful.
That's fine. I like intimacy.
Okay. On that note, no, not really. Starting with, I don't know. There's that podcast that has the unpopular opinions. We're going to call it Hot Takes.
Hot Takes.
Hot take. Your hot take on open shelves. Open shelving.
I think they look pretty, but people don't realize how hard they are to keep clean. And nothing quite looks like Joanna Gaines' Instagram or whoever.
Yeah.
I think open shelves are great for like a buffet or something around. Sorry, not a buffet, but like built-in shelving around a TV. Okay. I think that's great. I like open shelves there. I like being able to see books or puzzles or whatever it is there. It's generally things that you are leaving there more consistently.
Sure.
But open shelves in the kitchen, I think are...
Specifically open shelves in a kitchen.
I think are pretty, but nobody's dishes are all the exact same. If you have kids, you're buying dishes at different times because some break and they never...
Sure.
Like, they're all different paint color. Like, it's just... It never looks the same. It never looks like IKEA Instagram.
Stack.
That being said, I have open shelves in my house, and they stay sort of okay. But for the most part, it looks cluttered. And I think probably open shelves for maybe someone that has a smaller family, like maybe it's like a husband, wife, and they're empty nesters, or they, maybe only have one kid right now, and they keep their plastic dishes in a drawer in the, in the cupboard there. It might be a little easier to kind of keep clean and tidy. But like I have 5 kids, and so oftentimes like we have 3 stacks of bowls, and we never have enough bowls. And so it's like it just looks cluttered because it's never as clean or as beautiful as Instagram makes it look.
Yeah. I mean, I only have 3 kids. It's still so many kids. But nothing is ever always put away. Like something is always in a dishwasher or in the process of the flow. So those shelves never look styled, I guess.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think I have designed a kitchen without at least open shelves somewhere. For a long time now. I don't like upper cabinets. That's my hot take is I don't like to use them. I don't like, I have one in my kitchen just for glassware, but it's one of those that go all the way down to the countertop. So it's like a column cabinet as opposed to an upper.
So you'd rather just see wall.
Yeah.
Tile.
Well,
something.
I'd have it pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that if open shelves are incorporated, and what I've always told my clients is these are decorative. These are not your functional. This is not functional storage.
Yeah.
This is where you're putting your, plate that you've inherited, or a stack of things that is really meant to just sit there and look pretty.
Or you pull every once in a while. Yeah.
Just to clean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But, I think that open shelves create little moments in your kitchen that make your kitchen feel more like part of the house instead of this commercial space, this production type space. Okay. But I don't use them for functional storage. I haven't designed them to be functional. Storage.
Yeah. I think ours are, because we have one shelf that has plates bowl, like our big plates, our little plates, our bowls. And it's on one shelf, right? And it just makes sense from the dishwasher to that shelf. You know, everything goes there. And then the next shelf up is cookbooks, which we hardly ever look at cookbooks anymore, but it's like cookbooks, a cutting board, and a plant.
Yeah.
You know, and then the one on the opposite side, we have some like snacks that we get into sometimes, like kids goldfish. You know, my wife has a jar of chia seeds that that we use for something.
Someday.
Yeah. and then the other shelf has plants or something on it. So I guess we kind of have a mixture of both. We have some that are decorative, and then we have a couple one that we semi-use and one that we use all the time. But yeah, I would just say, I think probably the best place that I've seen them and still have a little bit of function is like a Nook coffee bar is probably where I've seen it the most.
I do have all my coffee mugs on an open shelf,
but
it's at the wet bar. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I did just do a bistro kind of shelf at a dry bar for somebody. So it's got all of their wine glasses and beverage fridges are below. And those are functional. Like,
makes sense.
They're using that glassware regularly.
Yeah.
But wine glasses are way prettier than my dinnerware.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, all of our bowls have chips in them. Like, it's just, everything is almost broken. It's always almost broken.
Not broken enough to throw it away.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, anyway, there's your hot take. Open shelves are kind of dumb, but also have a purpose. Just don't use them for things
most designy things. It's not a rule. There are no rules, but
yeah, that's true.
But there are.
Yeah, there are. Anyway, so let's talk about
how to hire
and how to hire a designer.
So for a designer, I think there's several kind of parameters that your project has to fit in if you're going to bring a designer on.
Okay.
And maybe this is designer specific more so than general rule.
Okay.
But typically, I want to be brought onto a project with a significant scope. So that's where I think that I'm adding value to the project instead of just being an extra expense tacked onto the project.
What do you mean by significant scope? What does that look like?
I think anytime that somebody's trying to affect the exterior architecture of the house. Like, I want my house to look different. We bought this place. It's a real boring, plain little ranch, and I want it to look like something special when we pull up. Or anytime somebody's trying to affect the flow and the function of the inside of the house, like something's not working, we never use this space, we would like to kind of reconfigure all of these things so that the footprint that we have becomes really functional. Those to me are like significant scopes compared to I want a cosmetic facelift in my kitchen. So I'm not saying that I would not want to be brought on to just a kitchen renovation project, but it would definitely have to be a conversation of, there's that bell curve of kind of diminishing returns where the amount that you're going to pay me probably shouldn't be equal to the entire scope of the project. Yeah. Like, it needs to be significant enough that I'm adding to the project instead of just a fun way to spend money.
Yeah. Okay. So I hear that. So what if someone wants to bring you on? It's like, maybe it's a smaller scope. Maybe it is just a kitchen facelift, but they really do want someone's help with fixtures and like what makes sense for, new appliances and stuff like that. How would you approach that? Is that just something you're thinking like, okay, I would maybe use this person instead? Or is it, I guess,
Yeah. So designers work in several different ways. Typically, across the industry, the most common way that a designer will bill or charge a client is hourly. So if I'm doing an entire project, that hourly rate is going to be different than if you're bringing me on to give my opinion for a few things. That's to discourage the people that want to bring you on to give your opinion for a few things, but also because it's a much harder job. And it kind of gets into the difference between a designer and a decorator as well.
Okay.
So a decorator is going to be somebody that's great with color, great with resources, you know, really understands how to add aesthetic value to a space, where I think a designer's main focus is more of, I need to get to know my client, get to know how they want to use the space, change the function, the flow, the layout, the space, all of those things, to really improve things from the structure out.
Okay.
So I would say on some of those, especially if your builder's great, your builder has resources with people that design cabinets for a living and have done, you know, 10 times the number of kitchens that I do.
Yeah.
So they can maybe speak to how your kitchen should be set up, or vendors that, you know, have people in the showrooms that can help put those things together.
Okay.
Where the cost for that service is already built into the expense of doing the kitchen.
Yeah.
So again, that's where it's like, if the scope is there and the project is like, if we're doing a significant kitchen remodel and we're bringing a range over from France, it's $50,000 in and of itself. And, you know,
I hear you.
Then it makes sense to have the designer that's really going through all of those details. But are there people with a great eye and a great sense of color that are already built into your project? Yeah, and that's where hiring the right contractor is really, really critical, because that person has a ton of those resources already.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I found a little bit too, is a lot of times people, and I know I talked about it in the last podcast, where it's like, you know, I'm not your decorator, your designer, I'm your contractor. But the reality is, I've done enough kitchens now, I've done enough things now. I do have a general idea of what works for a general populace, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen this done enough times, and it's been successful, that I can understand why this would work.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, you know, and that's I guess that's always been the struggle with me, is it's like, I don't really want to give them those ideas, because if they suck, then it's on me.
Then I'm the guy they're mad at.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the one they're upset at. But at the same time, like, I also have to take into account, you know, ideally, if you're hiring a contractor, you're hiring a contractor where this isn't their first kitchen remodel. Ideally,
yes.
Right? I mean, and there's budgets. I mean, that's kind of where sometimes money comes into play and all that sort of thing. Like, you know, you're kind of bound, like, between kind of bound to what you can afford. And sometimes the more experienced contractor should be more expensive than the contractor that is just starting out and maybe hasn't done a full kitchen remodel or whatnot. But that's a whole nother, you know, a whole nother piece that we can talk about. But I think just for me, like, taking into account that I do have the experience, I do have the understanding of, you know, generally what flow works. And like, while this may be a standard width between your countertop and your island, ideally, you want to go wider. It's not actually functional. Two people can't work in the kitchen at the same time, you know, if you meet whatever, you know, the standard width is. So, yeah, I think that's kind of a good differentiator between a designer and a decorator. I think sometimes the designer is maybe a little overkill for the scope of the project.
It can be. Where I would say maybe it would be helpful is, let's say somebody's phasing a project where, you know, they've just bought this house. This is going to be their forever home. They want to start with the kitchen, but they want a long-term focus. They want everything to be harmonious through the whole house. They want, you know, their goal is to eventually change, like, the architectural aesthetic of the house, but this is where they can afford to start. That's where it would be super helpful to bring a designer in to say, let's plan the project so that every decision that we're making incrementally is feeding that goal, instead of, you know, what you see if you're starting to look at real estate listings is the, like, oh, they did the kitchen in 2010, and then they moved on to the master bathroom, and that was when this phase was
design.
Yeah, where it looks like a Pinterest mood board with just like this shotgun of okay.
Or it was they remodeled the kitchen, sold it, someone else bought it, they remodeled the bathroom to their design, their taste. And so it's kind of where you get some of the...
So the designer would be really helpful in creating like this cohesive plan that then, if the budget's not there or the scope isn't there initially, there's at least something to follow where everything is building towards kind of this end goal.
Yeah.
And that's that's really what the designer's job is to not only help you like plan the end goal and the big picture, but even then to help you come up with a way to phase the project and come up with a way to prioritize your budget with, okay, here's what you have, here's what we should hit on to make the most of what you've got. So that's a big one too.
And so that's kind of the difference between the designer and the decorator, is just the scope in which the scope of the project is going to be different for the designer and the decorator, right? The decorator is going to come in and help with, making things look pretty, whereas you're going to be helping with some of the aesthetics, but it's also the flow and the functionality for the family or for the person that's having the remodel done.
Yeah, I would say that a decorator is not going to help you with a interior remodel where we're moving walls and we're putting the kitchen over here where the bathroom was, and we're switching this and we're changing this wing to the the primary suite. I feel like that's outside of what a decorator's comfortable with. There's certainly overlap, so it's a designation that gets really muddy. Because while I can come in and help with paint colors, I don't really even like doing that.
I don't even like painting my own house. I want to figure it out for my own place. Okay. So I guess when people are looking for a designer, you mentioned that you want to be brought into a project that has a larger scope. And at what point of the project do you want to be brought in?
Oh, like while it's a dream in your pretty little head.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Still newborn babe.
Yes. Yeah. If they're starting to be like this, we don't use the formal dining room at all, and it's just wasted square footage and we want to reconfigure things, or we just bought this house and there's no way 2 people can fit in this kitchen, or, kind of those, as there's like this niggling, this isn't right. Yeah. This doesn't feel like it should. This doesn't function the way I want it to. That's where I think that conversation with a designer, even as opposed to a contractor, is really, really helpful in trying to diagnose what's not working, and come up with a reasonable path forward. So a lot of times I think the designer should be brought in before the contractor. Yeah. If it's the right designer, which goes into how do you find the right designer?
I will just say real quick, I have been brought in on projects where they bring me in to look at their project and they're like, I want to change this. How would I do it? And I kind of go, you tell me, it's your house. Yeah. Right? Because I don't, we want to remove this wall, or, this dining room, we don't use it. What do we turn it into? It's like, well, you don't bring me in for that. That's when you need to bring in someone else.
And it really helps when somebody has given themselves some time in the space. Like, best practice with a remodel is to live in the house for a little bit.
Before you make any big decisions.
Even things like, we didn't realize when we bought the house that the sun rises over here, and we would love to spend more time on this side of the house. So little things like, there's so much nuance to, giving yourself some time in the place. Like, we have a house, the house that we live in, and we bought it knowing that this was not going to work long term for all of our people. But I am who I am, and my husband loves me for it. We bought the house, and I immediately started drawing, like, this is what I would change. This is what I want to do. Yeah. Between when we bought it and when we did the remodel in the house, it was 5 years. Yeah. And I went through 27 different iterations of what I wanted to do. And where we landed was like light years. Yeah. So giving yourself enough time in the space to see, like, what is worth doing? What do we want to do? do we even like these neighbors? I mean,
yeah,
so many things that affect your long-term goals for your house.
yeah.
But also just knowing, this is the way we actually live. This is what we need to make that work.
What I think is really critical. I mean, you don't have to live in a space for 2 years to know that this isn't working.
No.
But it's like, if you have kids, or even if you don't have kids, and you're like, you've been in the house for 6 months and you keep running into the same thing over and over, it drives you nuts, whatever it is. Like, okay, that's like, that this isn't working and you need to do something else. It doesn't have to be a 2-year process, but you do need to be in the space for a little bit, see how your family functions around it, and then make adjustments from there.
Yeah.
Which I think it goes back to kind of what we talked about last week is, you want to design a place that is functional for the entire family, not just what you see on Pinterest. Right.
Yes,
not just taking this pretty thing on Pinterest and putting it in your home, but is that actually functional, and is it going to help with the overall flow of our family and make it a place that we want to be in or can be in all at once or whatever it is.
Right. So I guess the biggest difference between when you would bring on a designer and when you would bring on a contractor is I love to be brought on at the planning stage when everything is still very much a possibility. And when we're looking at how to best use the budget that exists. So there's always a budget, even when the client says, money is no object. Like, that's not true.
Yeah, it's an object.
There's always a budget. How do we best use it?
Yeah.
And I feel like, so I get a little like, why is that your plan when people come to me with a fully developed, we want to knock this wall out, we want to enclose this space, we want to move this over here. I kind of want to, okay, let's take 3 steps back and ask, why do you want to do that? Tell me what that's solving. Tell me what your thought process is. I want to bring a plan to the contractor that says, we're going to knock this wall out, we're going to enclose this space, we're going to move this over here.
Yeah.
So
also, you already come with a budget too.
It's a loose.
No, I know. I understand it's loose, but for me as a contractor, when you come to me and you say, "Hey, this is the project, this is their general budget. Can you do this, or what can we do with this or in this budget with this general idea?" Makes my life
here's the wish list.
easy,
We've prioritized the wish list. This is what needs to happen. Here's what we'd like to happen. Put hard numbers to it, and let's make sure that we've got the client really, really happy with what we're able to accomplish. So that's like the biggest difference in when you would approach a designer versus when you would approach a builder is the plans are pretty conceptualized, and hopefully the plans are not conceptualized at all.
Well, and even with that, you've already built the trust. You've already, like, they've already in their head started to process through like what things are going to cost, and you've already walked them through the process. And realistically, a good designer, or if they've worked with the same contractor for a long time or worked with the same couple contractors for a long time, they have a general idea of what the contractor's costs or what they're going to charge for different things.
Right.
So you're going to be able to look at that and go like, okay, you have this giant remodel, your budget is $300,000. Unfortunately, that is not enough for what you want to do.
Yeah.
So we need to pare it down, or we need to find more money. So.
Yeah. And that's really the first few meetings we can pretty easily suss out what's possible for the money available. And that's another thing when you're hiring both a designer and a contractor. I think that the general feeling is like, I don't want to tell people how much I have because they'll spend it all.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
Yeah.
Like, we're people that have budgets and have families and live in this world as well. And we know that, like, the best thing we can give you is it didn't cost as much as you were expecting. Like, that's the goal always, is to come in and say, we were able to do all this and there's money left over. That being said, I need to know how much money you have, because again, if your laundry list is 4 pages long and you're telling me you have $100,000 to accomplish, all of these things, I'm just going to say, like, it's not even going to be a conversation. I'm going to get in my head, this person is so unrealistic. I don't want to continue this relationship because this is going to be a continuous battle trying to convince you that things cost what they cost. And that, you know, that kind of speaks to that trust relationship.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I think you're delusional, I'm not getting into.
Wow. I think that gets into a whole other conversation of the type of customers that we want to have. Like,
Right.
because it's a two-way relationship, right?
Exactly.
It
And
goes
that
back to what we talked about at the
interview, that
beginning.
how to hire and who to look for, that's a two-way street. And so if you're not being asked questions yourselves, to me, that's a huge red flag. Like, if your builder doesn't understand that that they need to qualify their client, maybe that's somebody that hasn't been around the block enough times.
Yeah, if your builder is, I don't know how to say this. If your builder is dependent on your job to survive, which in some sense they are, but if they're in a position where they can't say no to this job, then I would almost say that's sometimes a really scary position to be in as a client, because you have a contractor that, it just maybe isn't as, he may be really good at what he does as far as like the building of the structure, but there's a whole nother business piece that maybe the contractor is failing in. And so they're going to cut corners. They may cut costs. They may do things that may or may not be
So
the
that's
best for the
getting
client,
into
but
what types of questions to ask.
oh my gosh, you're so good.
So how and when, you know, kind of as soon as possible, and really determine your idea of whether that's a cosmetic quick upgrade or whether we're looking at a big picture. I really want a cohesive overall thing. So that should determine whether you go to a designer or to a contractor directly. Because I think the right contractor can help you with a lot of those, like, I just can't stay on the side of this kitchen for another day. I need it to be new. But how to hire those people is a whole separate issue.
So what questions should, do we want to go with, let's go with customer to designer first.
Okay.
So what questions should a customer be asking a potential designer candidate, you know, to come onto their job? What things should they be looking for? You know,
I think the first question should be experience. That can be a portfolio or references. So I want to know, have you done this type of work before? You know, how many remodels have you handled? How many additions have you done? And maybe not how many, but is this something that you have done? And then references. I feel like, especially if it's a cold call, which again, I think I just mentioned, I have never ever had somebody out of the blue that is just, I saw you on the street and thought you would help. So everybody that has come to me has had a frame of reference. So they've been referred by a contractor. They've been referred by somebody that I've worked for before. So there's kind of that built-in level of trust. And there's also, they've asked questions of the people whose opinion really matters. So, so that's kind of built in, but I would talk to people that have worked with that designer or contractor, and that goes for both. I would say that's those are questions I would ask a contractor too. Have you done this, or have you done something similar? Because there's so much overlap.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like a lot of times as a contractor, like I haven't done the exact thing that you are asking me to do, but I have done this, and this is very similar.
Right.
Or like, yes, I have done that. I did it once 4 years ago for a specific customer, you know, that wanted this thing. It can be done, and I have done it, but it's been 4 years, you know, or whatever it is. But I think as a customer looking at that and go like, okay, so he has done it. He has experience. I remember when I was first starting, I hated that question.
Sure.
Because it's like,
well, and it comes with a caveat, because every great person starts somewhere. You know, there's the reality that nobody has done everything. That's just ridiculous. But have you handled things like this? And what I would be asking of a designer specifically is, you know, if you're looking at a remodel, is been on construction sites? Have you worked with builders? Have you, have you ever added on 23 feet extension to it? Like,
exactly.
Not this, does this fit this box that I'm looking for? But how familiar are you with the way this process goes? Because it is so involved. There's so many steps. There's so many things to manage. There's so much overlap between who's responsible for what. So that would be the first question, is just how comfortable are you with this type of work?
This type of project. Yeah.
Secondly, I would take those references, call those references, talk to people.
Actually do something with the references.
Right. Not just be impressed that there's a list that they can hand you. The next thing that I would...
Real quick, what question would you ask those references?
How did the project go?
Okay.
Did it end and you were happy? Because I think that expecting a project to go smoothly is crazy.
Unreasonable. Yeah.
Projects they're not linear.
No.
Hiccups, bumps happen. But just like any type of relationship, how'd that person do when the shit hit the fan? I mean, those are the critical things, right? Not, was there conflict? It's how did they handle it?
Yeah.
So asking that of those references, something had to have come up. How was it dealt with? How much responsibility did the designer take? How much responsibility did the contractor take? What was the resolution on that? And then were you happy at the end of the project? So those are the things. I think that if somebody's giving you a list, they're giving you a list of people that they know are happy with their work.
Yeah. Hopefully.
So I think that can be a baseline assumption, is you were happy with the work that they did. But I think asking that question is of, when things went wrong, how did that go? Typically, it would be really illuminating.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what a customer should ask references, is just references of whoever they're hiring, what the potential client should ask.
And I would also ask, which would be a question that I would ask of references, and then I would ask of the person as well, pricing and contracts. I would ask how transparent pricing was. I would ask how billing worked. I would ask the client that. And then I would ask that of either the contractor or the designer. I would want to know how much effort have you put into the back end of this? And again, that speaks to how much of this have you done? Because anybody that's done this knows that the covering your assets is really important.
It is really important. Yeah. And I think just along like with the pricing and stuff like that, it's always something that's really touchy. And I think it's something that I think as a contractor, as a designer, or even as a homeowner, you have to be willing to talk money.
Yes.
I mean, and I've had clients where they play it super close to the vest. Like you're like, hey, what's your budget? They're like, well, you need to give us your numbers. And it's like, okay, I can do that. And I'd love to do that for you. But do you have a general idea? Like, and it's sometimes just pulling teeth to even get like a general number, like nothing that you're sticking to. And I think it goes back to, well, if I tell them how much money I have, they're going to spend all the money.
That's going to be
It's all going to be theirs.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not necessarily the case. And oftentimes, the project will come in cheaper. Or I've actually had a lot of projects come in cheaper than actually more expensive. And that's part of me. And I tell the customers, like, hey, all of my bids, they're going to be like extreme high end. Like if all the shit hits the fan, not just a little bit of it, but if all of it hits at once, this is what it could cost.
Right.
And I think too, like builders, contractors, designers being transparent, whereas like designers, maybe you don't have as much of like the variance and, what it could, like what the worst case scenario is. The contractors may be carrying a little bit more of that.
The worst case scenario in my world, the biggest variable is the client.
Yeah.
So the cost of my services is going to be directly related to how much client management I need to do, which is why I bill hourly as opposed to like a fixed fee for the job, because there's so much variation in what each client needs. So it's not that I'm incapable of doing the hand holding, but it's not
if I have
free.
to hold your hand, 8 hours a day for
right,
a month, you're paying me for that.
Yes. So,
I'm a nice person, but I also want to be paid.
But I also have other things going on also.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I can just going back to the pay transparency or the transparency about money is sometimes it's hard, as a contractor when I'm like bidding out, because I do two ways. Like I'll do fixed costs and I'll do cost plus. Just depends on the project. I've gone more towards cost plus now because it covers my butt a little bit more than the fixed costs, but smaller projects, I still know I can do fixed costs because of just the experience I have with, within certain parameters, but there's often times where it's like, they see my, my billable man hours, is $150 an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
And they look at that and they go, I don't make $150 an hour. How come you're making $150 an hour? And it's like, well, if I was actually making $150 on you, that would be great, but I'm not because, just like any employer, I have taxes, I have, building maintenance, I have fuel, I have my guy, like, if I pay a guy, $30 an hour, it's costing me 48.
Right.
$50 an hour. And so it's just people are like $150 an hour. It's like, well, actually, I am only making $20 an hour. You know what I mean? Like, it's all of those. Yeah. When you do the math, when you figure it out. And so I think some of it is just the transparency that, I had one guy who's like, I was a ship captain and I don't make that much. And I'm like, I'm a contractor and I don't make that much either. Like, it looks like it, but yeah. So I think just the transparency of that and being able to talk to your customers about money. And I found that when I send a bid that is expensive, say for generally what I do, 50 grand to 150 grand, like it's kind of a pretty common area.
Yeah.
If I send a bid that's expensive, I always make sure to then go to that customer, either go to their house or set up a meeting or get on the phone with them and walk through that bid. That way we can be transparent about the numbers. I can be transparent about the numbers and say, yeah, this is the number, we budgeted this many for man hours. This is what I'm hoping it'll actually cost. And, and even kind of break it down a little bit more for them if they have questions. And
I think the biggest thing with that bidding process, pricing, and the transparency there and contracts and all of those things, I guess would fall back to, that question, what happens when things go wrong? So how is that priced? So the fixed contract, that's for the scope that's defined. That's not for the fact that we open up your walls and find that they were built with toothpicks or that termites have moved in or, so even that has the disclaimer. And those are the things that need to be talked about up front so that nobody feels like they're taken advantage of on the backside of the process, because it's going to be one of you, either the builder's taking it or the homeowner is. So that's where if things are really discussed and those, you go through the contract, you discuss what's included in the contract, what's not included in the contract. You discuss kind of the contingency, which is where you're saying if everything goes wrong at the same time, is there room for that? Or do I need to have a contingency in reserve, which is where talking about money has to be something that everybody's really comfortable with, because I need to know when the main line is iron and rusted and all needs to be replaced or blows in the middle of the project and now the basement's flooded. Does this mean that we're cutting the main bathroom because there is no more money, period? Or does this mean that contingency that we talked about is now brought into the project? Like, I just need to know the project budget might be here, but I need to know kind of your position overall
if
so
stuff
that
goes wrong,
if
or
stuff
when
goes
stuff
wrong,
goes
the
wrong.
options that I'm presenting to you are reasonable and make sense. If I know that this is the money, there is no more money, then the project scope needs to be here so that we've got a contingency. If it's, this is the money, I'd love to spend this much, but I've got all of this so that I guess if we need a new septic system, that doesn't mean that we have to cancel the addition. of the kids' playroom or whatever. Like these are all real life examples. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's where knowing where we're at, like playing your cards close to the vest does not serve you.
Doesn't help anyone.
Because people can't make recommendations if they don't know the full picture. And the recommendations are never like, how can I buy my own island with your money? The recommendations are, I want you to be happy. So at the end of the project, I want you to be happy.
Yeah.
I want you to be delighted that, number one, you've done this and that you've chosen me to help. Like those are the goals.
And don't misunderstand this as like, we're not making any money. I am making money. Like as a contractor, I am making money. As a designer, you are making money.
Yes.
We are making money off our clients. I just think sometimes, and I know it seems weird to even have to say it, but I think a lot of times just think that we're doing it as a charity. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is what it should cost. But you know what? I'm gonna bear this extra couple $1,000s here. And I'm just going to cover that for you because I like you. And it's like, we're still a business. We're still trying to make money. There are still 20, 30, sometimes 40% margins depending on what's going on and what has to be done for the project. So I think just having that conversation, being able to be just going back to the transparency, it's like, yes, I am making money off you, but I'm not making nearly as much as maybe you think I am.
Well,
and I think just having that conversation.
Or that margin is not the money that I take and put in my pocket at the end of the day. That would be beautiful. Yeah. But that's not how any business works. Yeah. And that's not how mine works.
If I make $100,000 on a project, I don't put $100,000 in my bank account. Right.
So I think that that's easier, or maybe this is just a belief that I have in my head, but I feel like that's easier when you're like building something, you know, like you're putting together a tangible thing that you can touch. I have a harder time, or people try to negotiate harder when it's a creative, you know, like I'm just paying you for your ideas. Are you sure they're worth that much money?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, thank you, but also it's harder to negotiate from a position of, you know, like that's how much it costs. Like if you want to adorn this thing with gold or marble, there's a cost to that. And that's easier for people to swallow than, you know, trying to compare myself to like gold and marble. Like my ideas are worth a lot because they're good ideas. And they're better than somebody that's, you know, charging the bargain basement price. So I feel like that is stickier on my side of
makes sense, for sure.
the thing.
For sure. It's hard to sell an idea. It's hard to sell a conceptualized drawing than it is to sell them a thing.
Right.
Like
right. And it's harder to justify like that margin. I mean, I have a cost of business just like anybody, but you know, when it's like a creative pursuit, that's not specific to designers. That's like all creative jobs, I think. It's just harder to pay for someone's expertise when it's all very idea based.
Yeah. Well, I think we can kind of step into now of like, I guess, how to find the contractor, or I guess when they're working with the designer, when do you bring the contractor in? So say they bring you in from conceptualization from the very beginning. When then do you bring a contractor into the project? Should the client, I guess, ideally as I'm going to say a good designer, but just as a designer in general, you generally have a contractor or two that you have worked with or work with closely, unless you're just a one and done shop of design and then you hand it off to the customer and they go find their contractor. But that's less and less is normal.
That's less the work that I like to do, I guess. That's definitely the way that some designers work, just with this total a la carte service where I make all the selections, I pass this off to you. You can pick this up in 3 years, or you can pick this up tomorrow and take this on
to your
somebody that can implement everything. So yes, I have contractors that I work with, and I have contractors that I prefer to work with just because that relationship, that dynamic functions well. I have contractors that I won't work with ever again because that relationship is so difficult. So, and I know that I'm a little bit unique because I come from a construction background. So there can be a lot of stepping on toes. I'm not a person that shies away from that in general. So if a contractor that I'm working with is like, we can't do that, I'm going to be like, yeah, you can switch this and load this over here. And that's a thing that, that there is a school that's really hard for them to hear that. Or maybe it's just me. Yeah. Like that's totally a possibility. I don't have to be everybody's cup of tea, but,
yeah,
but
I think
those relationships are, there's people that work and there's people that don't. So I definitely have people that I work with that I work very, very well with.
Well, I think in most cases, contractors are used to being the end all, be all reason for why something can or can't be done. Because if your contractor says it can't be done, well, I mean, I believe him. He's a contractor. He does this every day.
Yes.
But the reality is, oftentimes, and what I tell customers is there's always a way. It just depends on how much money you have.
Yes. And I'm going to bring, my background and my experience and my expertise to the table too. I am going to defer to the contractor, because it is your liability. It's your, you have to figure it out. You have to make it work. So there's definitely deference, but that relationship to where we can work on a solution together, that has to be possible, I guess. And that's not possible with some people. Like some people, that dynamic just doesn't, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think interviewing those people in tandem is really critical. Even though you would bring a designer on earlier, having a designer that either has contractors or having a contractor that has designers, so that that relationship is one that's proven, is one that is enjoyable. You can walk onto a job site and feel like this isn't a fun place to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So those are all factors, especially if it's a remodel and you're living in the home. Get that right, man. That's
it's the worst.
It can be.
The worst.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But the reality is not. Most people don't have a second home to go to.
No.
It's and so you're just doing everything you can to keep some form of normalcy in their house without a kitchen. Yeah, it's like, well, we're doing this remodel in December. I hope you have a barbecue and a garage that you can cook out of, or you're going to eat out a lot. It's so anyway. Fun. So something I want to mention as far as questions you should ask your contractor, because we've talked a little bit about designer or contracts and how they work with the designer, how the contractor works with the customer, what they did to handle problems. But kind of one of the key things, and ideally your designer is working with a contractor that has all these things, but say you're finding a contractor, sans designer, and you're maybe doing it backwards, or you have a designer that maybe did an a la carte thing and now you're trying to find a contractor. Like the bare minimum of things that you should find are one that is licensed.
Okay. Good call.
I'm just saying, they need to be licensed. And in the state of Oregon, where we are, contractors are required to study and take a test. It's not just, I know some states, I know Idaho, you go in, you fill out a sheet of paper saying, I'm going to be a contractor. And you pay your fee and you are a contractor. Granted, they have different scopes of what they can do.
Yeah.
But, in the state of Oregon, you are required to study and pass a test.
And that can be all looked up online. You can look up the contractor. You can look up whether or not there's been any complaints about the contractor to the contractors board. And you can verify that your contractor has a bond and insurance, which that was
the other two things. Yep. Insurance and bonded, right? The insurance piece, that's going to cover you, or the bond is going to cover you if the contractor really screws up or something happens and, there's going to be legal fees, or there's maybe a pipe blew or something blew in the middle of your project.
Left the heater on and the house burned down.
Yeah, they left the heater on, or I've seen the trim guy come through and he's putting in his trim and a little penny nail right into your PEX line, and it just floods the end. So there are things that can happen, and if your contractor is not licensed or insured, you are on the hook for it.
Yes, and conversely, in Oregon, there is no licensing required for designers.
Yeah.
So that's weird. Other states are different and require different education levels and different licensure. But
So
not in Oregon.
So then
asking
on that,
those questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, then on that, it's even more important to ask your designer the right questions, because unfortunately anybody can call themselves a designer.
Yes, accurate.
And so, and
you don't even have to fill out a piece of paper.
Yeah, you don't exactly. There's no paperwork and nothing. You just have to create. I mean, if you're just a sole prop, you don't even have to really do much paperwork.
Yeah. So maybe another question would be, you know, your references, all of those things, but kind of in line with asking about references is asking about people that you have worked with. Because I have a network of subs that I work with.
Yeah.
Even if it's an upholsterer or, you know, my tile guys are fabricators or the guy that does custom metal work or the blacksmith or, you know, I've got people that I work with, which is important if you have cool things that you want to do. Like, I'm not in there painting your walls.
I don't have an anvil. I'm not forging any metal. Yeah.
So, you know, who are some people that you've worked with on projects?
Exactly.
Or if you're looking at a portfolio, like who fabricated those mirrors for you? You know, asking about your network of resources can help kind of prove your qualifications in the absence of licensure or any, you know, real paperwork or educational requirement. And that would be true of a builder too.
Absolutely.
Like, who do you use for excavation?
Who's your drywall guy? Is he good? You know, like, but can I see? And that's another thing too. Is not only getting references for the contractor, but even trying to get references. Like, if you're having an extensive amount of electrical work done, getting references for his electrician, or you know, like taking that step further to ask the right questions, because it's gonna be so much less of a headache if you go into the project and you have all of the information. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So.
So this is one that's right now I'm working on a primary bathroom, and I am using a new fabricator for this project. So this is something that new to me.
For what material?
Slab fabrication.
Okay.
So I got references from slab yards and from other designers. Have heard great things. But this is something that I brought to the client. Like, this is new to me. This is a new fabricator. I want you to know that. I want total transparency about these things, especially if it's a vendor that I haven't personally worked with before. But the fabrication is kind of, well, I'll try to get pictures so we can put those up. But it's going to be a slab arch, like a cased arch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the slab has to do the whole radius and bend the whole thing, and then a casing on the front of the shower. So the shower is fully enclosed.
Yeah.
It's going to be so.
It sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. But my normal fabricator was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I do not want to do that. It's because they've got to make, I think he calculated it's like 64 bevel cuts to do this arched opening. And then it all has to be fabricated together, and then it all has to be polished out. And he's like, you know, my normal fabricator is like, it's going to look like chaos. And I'm like, nuh-uh. On Pinterest, it looks awesome. They're doing it. I can find somebody that can do it. Yeah, I had to go find a new fabricator that was like, and this guy's, I'm excited because he's like, this is going to look sick. I'm like, yep.
Yes, it is. Well, I think that's another thing too is having subs that are excited about their work.
Yes.
I think that's I think like there's some things like drywall, but even like finishing drywall, which is literally the worst thing in the world to me. Like, there are people that love it, and those are the people that I want to hire because they're going to go in and you know they're going to do a good job. Just like this fabricator that's excited about fabricating this specific thing.
Yeah.
It's really important. Tile. I really like tile. Some of my guys hate tile. I love tile. When someone comes to me with a cool idea, I'm like, yes, let's figure out how to do this because that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just finding someone that's not only good at their job, but like gets excited about seeing new things or trying new things or is open to trying new things. Because a lot of times you get people like, and I think it's more so in like some of the more common trades like electrician or plumber, like they have a very strict, they're bound by some pretty high standards of what they can do.
Right.
But I think finding someone that's willing to be like, okay, I don't know if I can do this, but let me figure it out because it sounds really cool. Let's see if we can do it.
But even that is, you know, like I work with an electrician and she's fantastic.
Did you just say she?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She's like the coolest lady boss in the world.
Yeah.
I want to be her when I grow up. I don't even think she's older than me, but she's so cool because, you know, she's got her things that she does and that she knows how to do, and I will bring her the thing that I found on Instagram or Pinterest, and like, so this is a product. What do you think? Like this crazy bathroom, we're doing a whole slab backsplash as well, and so all the outlets we're running have to be in the slab because there's no other place flush. For it. Yeah, so they're going to be flush and faux painted so that they just dye and hide. But the slab's a 3cm slab. I can't mill it. It's going to be a beast. And so I, you know, found this product, brought it to her. It's new to her. Yeah. She's not done anything like this. And so she's just as excited. I mean, about outlets, like these are the people you want on your job. Like, these outlets are going to be awesome. If it works like this, I'm going to order one in and do some dry runs and see, you know, like, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. But those are the things that are going to make this bathroom absolutely spectacular instead of having like the white outlet ruin your $1 million slab. Questions that I hate as a builder adjacent person is price per square foot. It's just not a good metric. We're not selling real estate.
And if your builder is giving you a price per square foot,
they're lying.
Yeah, they're lying. Or it's sometimes this is what I'll say is sometimes I will look at a project and they're like, I just need a general estimate. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I can give you a general estimate, but I have in there like, this is not like the final number.
Well, and the reality, like, depending on what you want, you know, if you want these flush outlets in your slab backsplash with your arched shower opening, you know, that's a variable of $100,000. Like on a bathroom, you know, that's real. So this isn't a blanket. Yeah, we can't just rough estimate your little dreams and hopes because I don't know. It's not quite how it works. Yeah. So I would be like red flags about getting a real firm price per square foot. Unless you're like building a new house with a dare or something, like they've got that down to a science. Yeah, that's different. They're building, track homes. They're not track homes, but yeah. But yeah, set plans. I would be really cautious about a contract that's not well-defined. We will build you a second story above your garage. Again, this is like real scenario that a friend said, I worked with a builder. He gave me this thing. He's going to add a second story above my garage. And here's the bid. And I was like, that number does not make sense at all. Yeah. But then like, let's look through the contract and see if you just got the deal of a century or if you're going to end up, up a creek. And the contract was, we'll add a second floor. And I was like, but how? Like, you need somebody that's going to look at your footings. You need somebody that's going to, you're going to have a huge amount of structural support. There's no engineering that's been done. There's not a plan set attached to this. Like, you cannot take this number to the bank because nothing has been defined on how they're going to give you this. How are they
actually going to put that second story on? Yeah.
So that needs to be really, really clear. The type of work that is included and the type of work that's not included. Again, I think if you're handed something that doesn't have, I am not doing this, I am not doing this, this doesn't account for this, that's a red flag too.
My other point
good.
Is ask your contractor what things he's going to be doing and what things he's going to be subbing out. So we kind of talked this a little bit, what are your contractor's proficiencies and what are they're like, no, I'm not good at this. Yeah. And they have good people that they're going to bring in. And that goes back to a little bit to the sub conversation is having good subcontractors that they know and trust and actually like what they're doing. Sure. I mean, no matter who your contractor is and how great they are, they're not going to be faster and better than like a drywall contractor. Exactly. Like those guys do fast. It all day long. Oh, they're so fast. Yeah. Or like your contractor driving to Home Depot to buy a pallet of bat insulation.
is not going to be faster than the guys rolling up with their truck. Like,
exactly.
There's just certain things that it doesn't make sense for your contractor to do. Don't expect it. But at the same time, I for sure want a contractor that knows the trades, even if it's just from a purely logistical standpoint. Like, he's not doing any of that work himself, but knowing how to do all those trades is going to help sequence the project and make the project run smooth.
Absolutely.
Asking them what they're taking care of. And then I guess that also goes right back to finding two people that can work together as far as a contractor and a designer, asking what the contractor is responsible for and the designer. If both people are on the project, that needs to be pretty clearly defined. What materials is the contractor providing versus what materials is the designer providing? How often is the designer going to be on site? What walkthroughs is the designer going to be present at? Well, I think there's like the how to qualify and find somebody is a different conversation than how is the project going to run. And you can ask that kind of general thing, but typically for me, like if I'm qualifying a client or there's an initial inquiry, those are big picture things. Once we determine, yes, we're going to be working together, that's when I lay out, like, here's when you're allowed to text me, please, not on the weekend. You know, like all of those things. Here's how you'll be updated about your job. And those can be big picture conversations because you do want somebody that can provide you with regular updates and that understands that that's important.
Get to know your contractor's team, or ask who is on your contractor's team, not just your contractor, not just their subs, but like who on his team is project manager, you know, the guys that are going to be on your property day in and day out. Ask them about those guys. If a contractor is like, yeah, I've got, you know, Billy Bob and I'm looking for another guy right now to kind of fill in because our other guy is back in prison, which isn't an uncommon story in the land of construction, you know, but finding a contractor that actually hires good people. And I know that that's a thing that is somewhat subjective, right? What I think is good and what you think is good is going to be different.
Wow.
But a contractor that's willing to highlight his employees or bring someone on site and say, hey, this is John. He's been with me for 5 years. You know, these are his experience. This is his expertise. This is what he's good at. He's going to be your main point of contact for Grizzly Mountain Construction while we run your project. I will be in and out, but he's going to be your day-to-day contact.
Right.
And just kind of setting forth just some of the standards on who they're going to contact about different things, and really also identifying the roles of the different people within the construction company's within the construction company, right?
Sure.
Because I may not be on the job site every day.
Right.
But he's going to be on the job site every day, and you need to learn to know and trust him. And so even like I've had people ask me, they're like, are you going to be here? And it's like, well, I may be here, but the person you're really going to want to meet is Pepper. And then I go into like, I praise Pepper as much as I can. Like he's a really good guy, but it's also like, I want to not oversell him, but I want to sell him to the customer because he's the one that's going to be interacting with them every day. And like, so far I haven't had anyone tell me they hate Pepper. You know, but I think it's just one of those things where, like, as a contractor, you need to be hiring people that you're going to want in your own house because they're going to be in someone else's house. And I think even along those lines, like, you can get even deeper. It's like asking the right questions of the contractor. So, like, something I learned in the beginning was just being aware, like, when you walk into the house for the first time to meet the customer or whatever, like, just take into account, like, okay, are there toys on the ground? Okay, cool, they have kids. How old are their kids? Do their kids still take naps? Do we need to be aware of when they take naps? That way we're not ruining the entire life cycle of this family. And so asking like, hey, you know, when do your kids take a nap? Okay, they take a nap from 1 to 2. Great, we're going to go to lunch at that time. That way you can have some peace and quiet while, you know.
Well, so and just like to that point, it just reminded me because I just did a bathroom at my own house. And so I've got my plumber that's a great friend, like been to his house. His kids are in school with mine, you know. I know this guy. And he was just supposed to come in and fix the valve. There was a valve stop. Anyways, I was at the grocery store and he called and was like, hey, I told you I was going to stop by this afternoon, but you're not home. And I was like, my daughter is. She can let you in. He's like, that's a hard stop for me. I'm not in the house with people's kids. And I, it was frustrating because I'm like, I just want this done.
Yeah.
But after I got over like, okay, we'll reschedule. I was so glad. Like, this is somebody 1000% I will send to people, like somebody that's aware enough to have a hard stop with like not doing it. It's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to you at all, and just that awareness of,
it's a really big
these
deal.
are people that I want to work with forever because that's invaluable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's, and that's kind of, that's a great example of a good contractor, a good sub. I think someone that has those standards and is willing to say like, okay, like, making the money today is not the most important thing. Putting myself and keeping your family, in a safe position is more important to me than, the $300 I'm going to make changing out the valve or whatever it is.
I'm a crazy, overbearing, conservative, paranoid parent. It was not something that had even popped up because like I said, I know this guy so well. I didn't even think that it would be an issue, but I so appreciated that he was like, nope, that's we'll reschedule. So
that's cool. That is really cool. Is there anything else that you had on your list of things that you wanted? I think there was more that we wanted to talk about, but we may just run out of time today.
No, but like big recap would be, first question would be kind of references, both people that you've worked with as in terms of subs and kind of your network and people that you have worked for, clients, and actually use those references, call those people. Next thing would be ask questions about pricing and contracts. How developed are those?
Yeah.
And
is there complete transparency, or what's
what is the pricing structure? How does that work? Is it a cost plus model? Is it a fixed price model? What would you recommend for a project of this kind of size and scope?
Which we can go into those different models in a different podcast.
We can talk about pricing and money. But asking that conversation up front. And I think the red flags to look for would be somebody that doesn't have that's just kind of like, I'm a handshake friend, no thank you, or something that like, well, I haven't really thought about that. Maybe keep calling people, and then asking if it's the designer that's the first contact, if it's the builder that's the first contact, asking who's a builder that you work with, who's a designer that you work with, and how are those relationships, how does that look? How does that work? Those are really huge. Red flags to look out for would be, again, the like really loose, fast and loose with pricing, square footage.
Yep. Not insured.
Per square foot price, licensing.
Which,
it's something that I gloss over because I don't have to be licensed. But
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into the job as the second contractor. The first guy didn't have a license, didn't have a contract. He went in, did a bunch of work for the client, and it was crap, right? It needed to be fixed. But they had no repercussion because it wasn't licensed.
There's nobody holding him
There
accountable.
was no contract written. It was just, I give you money and...
One that you should be aware of if you're considering a remodel is like Oregon lien laws and making sure your contractor's filing those right to liens and the subs are filing those. That's just giving you even more assurance that the business end of their company is on the up and up. It doesn't mean that, those are not documents to be afraid of. It just means that somebody's taking care of the business side of the business, which is a really reassuring thing.
Yeah. I did think of one more, and we'll just talk about it real quick, but permitting. You need a contractor that's going to pull permits.
Yes.
I guess I can say when I was young and dumb, I did a job that I didn't pull permits for, and it took me 2 years basically to clear everything up with that job, to fix that. It's something I will never do again, and I suggest that you don't get into bed with a contractor that's afraid to pull permits.
No,
because the reality is the county, whatever your permitting agency is, whether it be the city, the county, the state, generally speaking, they're there to help you. And if the contractor's afraid to even walk in and get help from the county, like there's so many times where I've gone to the county where I have questions about how do I do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
99% of the time, they're going to be like, oh, this is how you do it. Or like, I don't know, let me help you. Like the county is not there just to take your money and, you know, require you these permits so that you can build an addition on your home, and they just want to have their hand in your pocket, right? Hand in your wallet.
There's like a small percentage of me that believes that that's true, but
but the reality is, like, as I've gotten to know the people of the county, like, they're all good people.
We are in a place where we can say really confidently, this building department is so helpful and so easy to work with.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I work in other places
and it's not.
That is not true.
Yeah.
Where it is just a big pain in the butt. But like most systems and processes, it exists for a reason. And going without is never wise. Even if it's a pain in the, even if it's an awful system and the people are terrible.
And the reality is, like, the permit cost is so small.
Yes.
Compared to the grand scheme of the project. Like, you're talking, like, on a very expensive project in the county that we're in, on a very expensive project, like, maybe, I don't think I've ever paid fees more than, like, $2,000.
Yeah.
And that's plumbing, electrical, and structural, and HVAC.
And we're low. Like we're
I know
statistically statewide really low. But
we are low. But I'm just saying, like, on a $150,000 project, $100,000 project,
a tiny percent.
$2,000 is nothing. I mean,
no.
Yeah.
And the benefit that gives you, it just means that if and when you go to sell your house, everything is on the up and up. Because work that is not permitted will bite you in the ass later. 1,000%.
Oh, cool. You added a bedroom? We can't actually count that as square footage when you go to list this house.
Or you buy a house that's a 4-bedroom and you want to just make something pretty, and we go to pull permits to waterproof your shower pan, and now we have to replace your septic system because you have 4 bedrooms and it was never permitted, and your septic system isn't in
You speak
compliance.
From experience on that one?
Oh, yeah. We ended up, never mind. Maybe I shouldn't wrap myself out.
So, yeah, permits are a big deal. So they seem like a small thing, but they really can bite you in the butt. And it's just a small fee that comes with the cost of construction.
Well, and like you said, it speaks more to the legitimacy of the contractor than the hoop that you need to jump through legally. Like, just somebody's attitude about permits says a lot about the quality of work that they've been doing.
Yeah.
Probably.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's it. Do you got anything else?
Not for today.
Not for today, yeah. So if you're watching this and you want to know more, or you have questions, you can post your questions directly into the comments of Instagram or wherever you're seeing this content on Spotify or Pandora or who are the other podcasts? Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment. Let us know any questions you have about just the building process or the design process, and kind of anything that you think you want to answer, because we're going to try and slot some time at the end of each podcast, or I don't know, we're going to slot some time somewhere to answer questions.
We would love, to know the things that you want to know about. We can obviously talk forever about anything. But things that are pressing, that are real issues or real questions or real concerns, or emergencies even. Like, how do I fix this?
Yeah, or if you have design ideas and you're like, is this a good idea? We can even,
where you don't have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay for our unsolicited, our solicited advice. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, high five. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.